Chapter 428. Situ Xingqian immediately dashed toward the opening. At the same time, she stretched out her hand to snatch the wooden box back. At this moment, Dumpling's figure darted out and directly bumped into the wooden box. The wooden box instantly moved to the side. Situ Xingqian's hand narrowly missed it. Indignance flashed across her eyes, but she didn't hesitate in her actions as she continued forward, planning to leave through the opening. The item in the wooden box is very important, but it can't be compared to my life. As long as I can escape from here, everything will be fine. After I leave, I still have a chance to snatch the wooden box back. However, just as she poked her head out of the hole, a cold wind suddenly attacked her. Bang! Chu Luiwei harshly kicked Situ Xingqian's face. Situ Xingqian's figure instantly flew backward and heavily bumped into the metal cage behind her. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Dumpling directly threw the wooden box out. Chu Luiwei easily caught it and opened it. Inside the wooden box was a roll of goatskin. An indescribably powerful aura spread out from the top of the mountain. Chu Luiwei was certain in his heart. This is it. Situ Xingqian closed the wooden box again and placed it in her cosmic bag. Her series of actions could be said to be smooth. Situ Xingqian finally recovered her senses at this point. Her mind was buzzing, and her face was in excruciating pain. There was a strong smell of blood in her mouth. She opened her mouth and spat out a mouthful of blood, but she realized that there was actually half a tooth in it. Chu Luiwei used all his strength in that kick, so she didn't even have time to avoid it and bumped right into it. Just like that, half of her front tooth was forcefully broken. Situ Xingqian's hands trembled as she touched her face. Her face was filled with sticky and sweet-smelling blood stains. It also quickly became red and swollen. She didn't need to look in the mirror to know how disheveled and ugly she looked. Situ Xingqian's lungs were about to explode from anger. Not only did Chu Luiwei snatch the wooden box, but he even disfigured me. This completely broke the last string in her heart. I'll kill you! Situ Xingqian rushed toward Chu Luiwei hysterically. A silver light flashed and a dagger appeared in Chu Luiwei's hand. Then she gently raised her wrist. A thin blade flew out from the dagger. It went straight for Situ Xingqian's face. Sensing the piercing murderous intent, Situ Xingqian's heart sank, and she immediately dodged. However, with her origin power sealed and the inhumane torture she had endured these past few days, she was completely exhausted. As a result, her pace was slower than usual. However, Chu Luiwei's flying dagger was very fast. The sound of a sharp weapon piercing through flesh could be heard. The flying dagger directly pierced through Situ Xingqian's left shoulder. A bloody hole appeared and blood splattered everywhere. Ah! Situ Xingqian shrieked and collapsed to the ground. She frantically looked at her shoulder and realized that it was still bleeding. That dark red blood quickly dyed a large area of her clothes red. The air was filled with the thick smell of blood, which was mixed with the originally unpleasant smell. It was almost nauseating. Situ Xingqian was just about to stand up when a second flying dagger flew out from Chu Luiwei's dagger. This time, it was her left ankle. A few pieces of broken bones splattered on the floor. Situ Xingqian was in so much pain that her face was ghastly pale. She couldn't even speak and could only tremble as she curled up into a ball. Only her eyes were filled with hatred as she stared at Chu Luiwei as if she wanted to cut her into pieces. Chu Luiwei never cared about such gazes. Boom! A loud explosion came from outside again. It's time to leave. Chu Luiwei turned around and ran outside. Situ Xingqian struggled to get up, but she still collapsed in the end. She could only watch as Chu Luiwei's figure disappeared into the darkness. Her chest shook, and she vomited blood again. Chu Luiwei, if there's a chance in the future, I'll definitely make her pay back everything that I've suffered today. Situ Xingqian took a deep breath in and bit her index finger. A drop of blood quickly flowed out. She then rubbed the drop of blood on the jade bracelet on her wrist. A faint light flashed, and the drop of blood was rapidly absorbed into the jade bracelet, disappearing without a trace. However, the two overlapping dots of light gradually turned blood red. Chu Luiwei went up the stairs, and the moment she jumped out, she felt the terrifying aftermath from outside. She looked outside and shockingly discovered that the previously complete and indestructible Xian formation had a few cracks now. It was on the verge of collapsing. In front, the gray-robed elder was already surrounded by many imperial guards. At one glance, there were 3 layers inside and 3 layers outside. There were even quite a few corpses piled up at the front. It was obvious that the gray-robed elder killed them all by himself. Chu Luiyue knitted her brows. It seems like the gray-robed elder is stronger than I expected. It was also because of this that both parties were in a stalemate. They were in a stalemate. Suddenly, the gray-robed elder lowered his head as if he were looking at something. His back was facing Chu Luiyue, so she couldn't see what he was doing. But the next moment, the gray-robed elder's aura increased tremendously. Anyone who blocks me will be killed without mercy. This low and deep voice contained a shocking amount of energy. An invisible wave spread out in all directions with him as the center. Then, he actually turned around and directly rushed toward Blessing Palace. Chu Luiyue's heart skipped a beat. He's coming in the direction I'm facing. While the defensive Xian formation was completely torn apart. As long as he enters this palace, he'll immediately discover my presence. Chu Luiyue surveyed her surroundings and realized that no matter which direction she escaped in, she would attract attention. Just as she was in a dilemma, a greenish-white fire suddenly started burning from Blessing Palace's side door. This was the scene that Emperor Jianghu saw when he rushed over. The gigantic silver Xian formation had already been torn apart, and a gray-robed elder had already rushed to Blessing Palace's door. The greenish-white fire rose up and instantly surrounded the entire Blessing Palace. His temples suddenly throbbed, and all the blood in his body seemed to have solidified. Stop him! Stop him! Situ Xingchen is still inside. This person clearly wants to use the fire as a smokescreen to bring Situ Xingchen out. This definitely won't do. Actually, Emperor Jianghu didn't know that the gray-robed elder was also trapped in the fire. The fire started very suddenly, and it was very fierce. Even though he was a stage 6 warrior, it was a little troublesome to deal with it. At the same time, Chu Luiyue, who was in the palace, saw the jumping fire and quickly rushed out of the window at the side without hesitation. When she jumped into the fire, her body was instantly wrapped in a layer of red fire. A figure suddenly appeared in front of her. It blocked her path. It's that mysterious person. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 429. Chu Luiyue immediately became alert. Is he going to attack me at this time? The wide hooded robe completely covered his body, and there was a black scarf on his face. From head to toe, he only revealed a pair of narrow black eyes. Chu Luiyue saw that pair of eyes. A strong sense of familiarity surged in her heart. Chu Luiyue's pupils constricted. A name was stuck in her throat as if it would jump out at any moment. He looked at her just like that. His eyes were like a pool of stagnant water without any ripples. However, Chu Luiyue instantly understood what he meant. She looked at him and slowly extended her hand. Her fingertips were still trembling slightly, but in the end, she slowly and firmly made a gesture. Finally, the man's expression changed. The next moment, something suddenly flew out of his sleeve. Chu Luiyue's eyes flashed with silver light. The next moment, she felt as if her entire body had been dragged into a strange space. Her surroundings were dark, and a strong sense of oppression instantly surged. However, Chu Luiyue did not panic. That was because she knew that this was a Yuan tool specially used for teleportation, the Heaven's Shadow Ring. This item was extremely precious. Even in the Tianling dynasty, it was a priceless treasure. This was because this Heaven's Shadow Ring only needed to inject a small amount of force into it to instantly teleport a person from one place to another. According to the distance of teleportation, it was divided into different grades. The higher the grade, the rarer it was and the safer it was. Chu Luiyue had this before, so she was quite familiar with it. After sensing it, she was sure that this should be considered a high-grade Heaven's Shadow Ring. Although the pressure of the spatial turbulence made people feel uncomfortable, there was nothing to worry about. Furthermore, she could feel that the person was standing not far from her. Even though she could not see anything, Chu Luiwei was not worried. Only that pair of long and narrow eyes kept flashing in her mind. She took a deep breath and suppressed all the questions and emotions in her heart. Not long after, the surrounding pressure suddenly disappeared. Chu Luiwei heaved a sigh of relief. He looked up and realized that he had returned home. The lamp in her room was still burning, emitting a faint light as if she had never left. Looking at the moon hanging in the night sky, Chu Luiwei did a rough calculation. The entire process took less than 2 hours. A gaze that seemed to materialize fell on her body. Chu Luiwei's heart skipped a beat. He took a deep breath and finally turned around. Their eyes met. Chu Luiwei's hands curled up slightly in his sleeves before he finally opened his mouth. "You came here today to help me get something from Situ Xingchen?" The man didn't speak, but the expression in his eyes changed. Chu Luiwei couldn't describe that feeling. Her heart felt like it was stuffed with thick and soft cotton, making it hard for her to breathe. However, vaguely, there seemed to be a small ray of light that pierced through the heavy fog in front of her, giving birth to some hope and anticipation in her heart. The two of them fell into silence. Chu Luiwei knew what she was waiting for. She even knew what the other party was waiting for. The cool moonlight shone down, elongating the two of their shadows. Chu Luiwei's hands tightened and loosened. She actually started to sweat in this cold night. After a while, she opened her mouth. Her throat was dry from nervousness. At the foot of the southern mountains, every word and sentence was spoken clearly and clearly. That originally clear voice had become slightly hoarse at this moment, and it carried a faint bitterness and deep yearning. The man's gaze finally stirred up a huge storm. He finally opened his mouth and said his first sentence of the night. 13th you return. The next moment he lifted his clothes and knelt on one knee. His right hand was tightly pressed against his left chest. Empress concubine, receive a bow from Qi Han. It's him. It's really him. Even though she had already guessed his identity, when she heard it with her own ears and confirmed it herself, her heart still beat wildly. It was as if a flame had spread from the bottom of her heart, causing her entire body to burn. Everything around her suddenly became blurry, and only the figure of the person in front of her became clearer. Chu Luiwei had fantasized many times about whether someone would see through her appearance and see through her true identity. She thought of many people, but she didn't expect it to be the 13 Yugards. Furthermore, it was at this time and in such a place. At the foot of the southern mountain, the 13 Yugards had returned. This was the secret message between her and the 13 Yugards. Other than them, no one else knew about it. Therefore, when Chu Luiwei said the first half of the sentence, it was equivalent to admitting her identity. She closed her eyes and turned to walk into the house. "Come in and talk." Chu Luiwei walked into the room, and Qi Han followed behind. After locking all the doors and windows and making sure that no one would notice anything unusual, Chu Luiwei sat down on the stool. She looked up and saw Qi Han standing at the side with his back straight, but his eyes were still looking at her from time to time. Obviously, Qi Han's doubts and shock about this were no less than hers. Chu Luiwei lifted her chin. So, Qi Han immediately said, "Thank you, Your Highness." Qi Han can just stand. Chu Luiwei finally couldn't help but laugh. After not seeing each other for so long, things had changed, but Qi Han's personality hadn't changed at all. "So, I'm no longer your master. You don't have to be restrained." Qi Han immediately knelt down again. "The 13 Yugards will always only have you as their master." He paused and lowered his voice. "Don't tell me, you don't want us again this time?" Chu Luiwei felt a lump in her throat. "When did I not want you? Get up first." However, Qi Han was very stubborn. "You haven't returned for so long. I have to kneel a little longer to make up for this period of time." Chu Luiwei couldn't help but laugh, but her eyes were red. "If you don't get up, you can go back now." Qi Han hesitated for a moment, then got up and stood at the side with his back straight. After pausing for a moment, he said, "After you left, this subordinate had nowhere to go." Chu Luiwei turned her face away and held back the tears in her eyes. After a while, the waves in her heart calmed down. Tell me, how have you all been in the past year? How did you find this place? Chi Han said. Actually, before you got into trouble, we already sensed that something was wrong and planned to go back. But on the way back, a few groups of people appeared and tried to kill us. By the time we rushed back, you had already... More than half of the ancestral hall had been burned. Chu Luiwei was stunned. So, you went back that day? Chi Han nodded. It's all my fault for being too incompetent and being too late. Chu Luiwei suddenly thought of something. What's with the burn on your hand? Chi Han paused for a moment. It was burned that day, wasn't it? Chu Luiwei asked. Looking at Chi Han's silent expression, her heart suddenly skipped a beat. Take off your face scarf. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 430. Chi Han hesitated for a moment, but he still did as he was told. The 13U guard had always obeyed Her Highness's orders. When he tore off the mask on his face and lifted his hood, Chu Luiwei's heart skipped a beat. The left cheek and neck of the young man in front of her were covered in burn scars. His originally delicate and handsome face had now become like this. Only his long, narrow and cold eyes were still the same as before. Why did you? Chu Luiwei opened her mouth with difficulty. After saying a few words, she seemed to be choked by something. After knowing that Her Highness was in danger, how could the 13U guard escape? It's all because of our incompetence that we couldn't save Her Highness. Chi Han didn't care about the damage to his appearance and body. The only thing he cared about was that he went back too late and couldn't protect Her Highness. Chu Luiwei didn't speak for a while. She always thought that she had died alone. She didn't expect that. The 13U guard had already gone back that day. What happened after that? After that, Jianghu continued to secretly send people to kill us. We planned to join forces with others to avenge you. Chu Luiwei smiled faintly. Her eyes were calm as if she was talking about other people. But you found out that most of them had already betrayed me, right? Chi Han hesitated for a moment before speaking. Actually, only a few of them betrayed you. Because some of them had important identities, things were a little tricky. Plus, we were just your personal guards and didn't have much say, so... Chu Luiwei nodded in understanding. Even if Chi Han didn't say it, she could roughly guess what had happened back then. It's really difficult for you to do all this. What happened after that? Jianghu and Shangguan Wan wouldn't let the 13U guard off so easily. They would definitely kill them all. How are the rest of the 13U guard? Chi Han clenched his fists. Don't worry, the others are fine too. Chu Luiwei's mood improved a little. Now, the 13U guard was one of the few people she could trust. That's good, that's good. However, Chi Han, why did you leave Heaven's Canopy alone? How did you find me? This was what Chu Luiwei was most curious about. Even she herself felt that reincarnating in someone else's body was too ridiculous. How did Chi Han find her? Furthermore, from the looks of it, it was clear that he already knew about it. Most likely, he came here today to seek confirmation. Your Highness, it's not just me. The other members of the 13U Guard are no longer in the Tianling dynasty. A month after the fire in the Imperial Ancestral Hall, Jianghu framed us for treason and said that it was because he heard about what we did that you went crazy during your cultivation. After that, he issued an arrest warrant for us. After discussing with the 13U guards, they left Heaven's Canopy together. Chu Luiwei's expression turned even colder. Jianghu has gone too far. Not only did he force her into a dead end, but he also framed the 13U guards. After she died, with Shangguan Wan's help, he could almost do whatever he wanted in the Tianling dynasty. Under such circumstances, the 13U guards' choice to leave was the best choice. Actually, you don't have to leave Heaven's Canopy even if you leave the Tianling dynasty. Each of you is very powerful. It's a waste of your talents to go outside. Chu Luiwei felt that it was a pity. Chi Han shook his head. Your Highness, you don't know. The reason why we left Heaven's Canopy was because we received a letter. Chu Luiwei paused. What letter? Letter about you. At this point, Chi Han suddenly looked up and fixed his gaze on Chu Luiwei. The letter said that if we wanted to avenge you, we had to leave heaven's canopy first. Chu Liyue was shocked. Who wrote that letter? Anonymous. Even now, we don't know who wrote it. But, under the circumstances, we didn't have any other choice, so we just did it. What? Chu Liyue was shocked. It's just a letter, and you actually believed it and did it? The 13 Yu guards were carefully nurtured by her. Each of them was powerful and cautious. Why would they make such a choice because of a letter? Wasn't this too careless? Chi Han's expression became a little strange. Because the handwriting in the letter is exactly the same as yours. Most importantly, there's a token of yours in it. Chu Liyue almost thought that she had misheard and immediately frowned. Many people had seen her handwriting before. It was not impossible for someone to imitate it. The 13 Yu guards would not believe the words in the letter just because of the similar handwriting. In that case, the token in the letter became extremely important and had a decisive effect. What token? A feather of the 9-colored heavenly pheasant. Chu Liyue suddenly stood up. The 9-colored heavenly pheasant was her fiend back then. Back then, she chose to perish together with the 9-colored heavenly pheasant and purposely let it out to save its life. But from everything that happened afterward, the 9-colored heavenly pheasant had clearly died that day. And the 9-colored heavenly pheasant's feather was extremely precious. It was the symbol of its status. Ordinary people couldn't even touch it, let alone pluck it off. Before she died, the 9-colored heavenly pheasant's feather was clearly still 9 neat and tidy. Since it was dead, how could anyone get its feather? Where did the feather in the letter come from? Digression. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from AI Network. Chapter 431. In the entire Tianling dynasty, she was the only one who had a 9-colored heavenly pheasant. The 13 Yu guards had followed her for many years, so they definitely wouldn't be mistaken. It was because of that feather that we believed the words in the letter. From then on, we always thought that you were actually still alive. Chu Liyue didn't know whether to laugh or cry. If she was dead, she was indeed still here. If she was alive, she had actually just woken up a few months ago. So, after leaving Heaven's Canopy, we split up and secretly searched for your whereabouts. This time, it was also because this subordinate had inquired about some information that caused me to have some doubts about your identity. Chu Liyue nodded in understanding. So, when you came just now, you deliberately made that gesture? You're so sure that it's me? Looking at Chi Han's confident look, Chu Liyue couldn't help but laugh. Chi Han said honestly, I heard that Mu Qinghe was here, so I followed her on purpose. Chu Liyue's smile froze. At first, I just wanted to know why she stayed here for so long. Later, I realized that something seemed to be wrong, so I started to secretly investigate you. Chi Han made it sound simple, but he had actually made ample preparations before coming here. Before he came, he already had a lot of confidence in his heart. Whether it was the astonishing talent of cultivating all 3 skills or the extremely similar expression in her eyes, he couldn't help but think more. But most importantly, especially when I saw that you brought a gift for Hong Yao that day, and Hong Yao's attitude toward you was so familiar, I was certain of my guess. Chu Liyue was stunned. You know all this? Chi Han nodded honestly. Chu Liyue, she actually didn't notice at all. Although her current strength couldn't be compared to before, her sensitivity and reaction had always been good. In the end, Chi Han had secretly investigated her for so long, but she actually didn't notice at all. After a long silence, Chu Liyue finally said faintly, It's been a while since we last met. I haven't seen you for more than a year, but your hiding skills have improved. A suspicious shade of red flashed across Chi Han's unburned face. Your Highness is too kind. 7 Coldness still had a lot of shortcomings. Chu Liyue, this brat really thought that it was praising him. However, looking at his scarred face, Chu Liyue felt distressed. If everything was still fine, is there a way to remove your scar? Chi Han was stunned. He didn't expect her to suddenly change the topic. He touched his face and said, Actually, this is quite good. Many people can't recognize my identity, so it's much more convenient to do things. Chu Liwei suddenly thought of something. Wait, could it be because that flame was mine? At that time, she was inconsolable, so she simply chose to self-destruct. She wanted to perish together with Jiang Yuqing and Shangguan Wan, so she released all the power in her body and burned it. How terrifying is the power of the fire produced by the Tianjing Yuan Meridian? If not, it wouldn't have been able to give the two of them such a harsh blow. I just didn't expect it to implicate Qi Han. Normal herbs can't heal this kind of scar because the Tianjing Yuan Meridian's power must have been left inside. If I can heal my Tianjing Yuan Meridian, I might be able to easily solve this problem. Chu Liwei rubbed her glabella. Okay, since you're done talking about this, tell me who told you about Situ Xingchen and asked you to come, right? 7 Stars' body froze. At the same time, in the palace, Blessing Palace was completely surrounded by greenish-white flames. The flames shot up to the sky and almost lit up half of the night sky. The Imperial Guards and a few strong warriors outside were all trying to barge in. However, the fire produced by the phosphor powder was very strong, so normal water was useless. Seeing that the fire was getting bigger and bigger, the crowd became increasingly anxious. Emperor Jiawen stood at the side, and no matter how the crowd persuaded him, he refused to leave. The bright and scorching fire shone on his face, making his face look even darker. Your Majesty, don't worry. We've set up a Xian formation around Blessing Palace again, and it's heavily guarded. Anyone who comes out from there won't be able to escape successfully. Chu Ning, who rushed over later, tried to persuade him. Emperor Jiawen placed his hands behind his back and didn't say anything as he stared at Blessing Palace closely. No one knew what he was worried about. Upon seeing this, Chu Ning didn't say anything else as he turned around and rushed to the front, leading the Imperial Guards to strengthen the defense. At this moment, Elder Zhong Yi finally crossed the flames and rushed into the main hall. The moment he entered, he saw someone coming out from the ground not far away. It was Situ Xingchen. Elder Zhong Yi was elated and immediately rushed over. Xingchen. When Situ Xingchen heard this familiar voice, she immediately looked up. Elder Zhong Yi. Elder Zhong Yi then saw the bloodstains on her face and body, and his expression changed drastically. What happened to you? When he walked closer, he then realized that not only was Situ Xingchen's force sealed, but her shoulders and ankles were also injured. At this moment, she couldn't even walk normally. Situ Xingchen's eyes were bloodshot and filled with deep hatred. It's Chu Liwei. She was the one who stole my things and injured me to this extent. Elder Zhong Yi, you must avenge me. Elder Zhong Yi's heart ached terribly. Don't worry. When we get out of here, I won't let her off. Situ Xingchen was suddenly stunned and suddenly grabbed his shoulders. But, she just came out from below, you should have seen her. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 432. Elder Zhong Yi knitted his brows. She came out? But I didn't see anyone just now. An ominous feeling rose in Situ Xingchen's heart. You really didn't see her? Then what about now? Is she still hiding somewhere here? This place has already become a sea of fire. With her own abilities, how can Chu Liwei successfully escape from this place without a sound? As she spoke, she agitatedly grabbed Elder Zhong Yi's arm. Elder Zhong Yi's heart ached when he saw her frantic and crazy expression. I wonder how much torture Xingchen went through inside for her to become like this. He comforted her. Xingchen, don't be anxious. Let's leave this place first. We'll talk about the rest later. Definitely not. Situ Xingchen screamed shrilly. She took that wooden box. I spent so much effort to get this thing from the Empress. How can I let Chu Liwei snatch it away just like that? I'm definitely indignant. Elder Zhong Yi knitted his brows and asked, What wooden box? Is it very important? Situ Xingchen took a deep breath in. She didn't tell anyone about the wooden box and kept it carefully. Even when she asked Father and Elder Zhong Yi for help this time, she only said that Rong Jin was the fake Heaven's chosen son and that she was implicated. Facing Elder Zhong Yi's question, she instantly felt guilty. Why yes, it's more important. You must help me. Elder Zhong Yi surveyed the surroundings, and his expression was tense. But Emperor Jiwen and the rest are already here, and there will be more and more people. The later it takes, the harder it will be for us to leave. Also, I don't know who set this fire on purpose. We must get out of here as soon as possible. If not, your body alone won't be able to take it. He was very strong, but it wasn't easy for him to bring Situ Xingshan out in her current state. Besides, he hid his identity this time. If Emperor Jiwen and the rest knew who he was and the news spread to Mingyue Tianshan, he would definitely be in trouble. Xingshan, don't worry. Since you know that it was Chu Luiwei who stole your things, you'll have the chance to snatch them back in the future. Then, he carried Situ Xingshan on his back and planned to find an opportunity to rush out. Situ Xingshan was in a dilemma, but she knew that this was the best choice given the current situation, so she could only accept it. A silver barrier instantly enveloped the two of them. The light flickered and covered most of their figures. From the outside, it was impossible to see who was inside. With a tap of his foot, Elder Zhong Yi instantly charged out of the greenish-white sea of fire and into the air. They're out! Suddenly, a cry of surprise came from the besieging crowd. Several figures immediately chased after him. Emperor Jiwen closely stared at the unity boundary. Even though he couldn't see their faces, he could vaguely see that there were two people inside. His heart sank. One of them must be Situ Xingshan. Stop them at all costs. Emperor Jiwen ordered. Countless sharp arrows flew out. But they were all blocked by the silver barrier in the end. But just as they were about to escape, a figure suddenly appeared. They were blocking their way. When Elder Zhong Yi saw that person's face, his expression immediately turned solemn. It's actually Yi Zhiding. The next moment, the other party's words completely stunned him. Long time no see. How have you been? Yi Zhiding recognized me? Thoughts flashed across Elder Zhong Ye's mind. I've only met Yi Zhiding a few times, and the other party hasn't even seen my face. How can he confirm my identity? Yi Zhiding smiled as he waved the fan in his hands. Since you're here, why don't you sit down and have a drink? Elder Zhong Yi guessed that Yi Zhiding was just bluffing. He didn't even plan to reply as he crazily circulated the force in his body. In an instant, the pressure on the barrier became even stronger. It then rapidly flew to the side. Elder Ye's smile didn't change as he waved his wrist, and the fan was instantly flung out. What? The moment it flew out, the fan actually fell apart and transformed into numerous white feathers that flew toward Elder Zhong Yi and Situ Xingshan. The sound of the feathers piercing through the air was heard. In the blink of an eye, those white feathers actually flew to the surroundings of the barrier. He was completely surrounded. Elder Zhong Yi immediately felt a strong suppression coming toward him. The surrounding space also gradually became heavy and stagnant. Even their speed started to slow down. Elder Zhong Yi was shocked. Yi Zhiding's fan is actually so powerful. At this moment, one of the white feathers suddenly pierced forward. The sound of something breaking was heard. Then, Elder Zhong Yi was shocked to see that a crack had appeared on the silver barrier around him. A white feather slowly pierced in. He immediately wanted to repair it, but it was already too late. The next moment, that white feather suddenly dissipated. The entire barrier also instantly transformed into countless rays of light and scattered in all directions. The veil hat on his head was also crushed by this terrifying force. But just as the two of them were about to be exposed to the crowd, Elder Yi suddenly shouted, "Stop!" Click. The moment he said this, the white feathers instantly multiplied and connected with each other in layers. They completely covered Elder Zhong Yi and Situ Xingshan's figures. Such a huge commotion happened in the palace, so it naturally couldn't be hidden. Very quickly, countless pairs of eyes in the imperial city looked in that direction. In the dark night, only the fire that shot into the sky was eye-catching and shocking. Quite a few people started to secretly guess, did something happen in the palace? During this period of time, the imperial city really wasn't peaceful. After just a few days, the empress passed away, Rong Jin was deposed, and even the palace was burning. The entire imperial city's atmosphere seemed to become much heavier as a result. In the darkness, something seemed to be moving. It was unsettling. At this point, Chu Liuyue's room was completely silent. After asking that question, Qi Han fell silent. Chu Liyue quietly looked at him. She wasn't suspecting Qi Han. If not, she wouldn't have directly admitted her identity. However, Qi Han clearly didn't explain some things clearly. Even if what he said previously was reasonable, he just coincidentally followed Mu Qinghe here and found her by following the clues. If he didn't know something, how could he be so sure that a young girl from a declining family in country Yaochen would be the high and mighty princess back then? Besides, even fewer people knew that she wanted to snatch the things in Situ Xingqian's hands. Could it be that Qi Han found out all of this by himself? Mu Qinghe also suspected me, and the two of them even interacted quite a bit. But because of her completely different appearance and body, as well as her impeccable identity, he couldn't confirm it for a long time. How did Qi Han find out? Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 433. Qi Han knew that he could not hide it anymore. After thinking for a while, he finally opened his mouth. After thinking for a while, he finally said, "Your Highness, this news came from Zhenbao Pavilion." Chu Liyue was stunned. Second Master Yen? Qi Han nodded and then shook his head. Chu Liyue suddenly understood. Did the head of Zhenbao Pavilion order Second Master Yen to pass this news to you? A look of surprise flashed across Qi Han's eyes. He did not expect her to figure it out so quickly. However, Her Highness has always been intelligent, so it's not strange that she could think of this. I went to Zhenbao Pavilion to buy herbs before. Later on, I found a letter in the box they sent. That letter, Chu Liyue understood. I see. If it's that person, it's not strange. This person has a mysterious background and is very resourceful. Country Yaochen's imperial mausoleum is almost completely under his control, let alone others. But, if he deliberately told Qi Han this, doesn't it mean that he already knows my identity? Chu Liyue asked, "What about the letter?" Qi Han said, "That letter was specially treated. After I opened it and read it, I burned it." Chu Liyue felt a little regretful. The other party was obviously very cautious and didn't want to leave any traces. Qi Han glanced at her carefully. "Your Highness, I didn't tell you before because I didn't want you to worry. I originally planned to tell you after I found out that person's identity. In this world, other than the 13 Yu guards, there's only one other person who knows Her Highness' true identity. In fact, he even found out before they did." After Qi Han received the news, he felt very conflicted. On the one hand, he was overjoyed and excited that Chu Liyue might be Her Highness. On the other hand, he was secretly worried that the other party would use this to do something that would harm Her Highness. Chu Liyue thought for a moment, smiled faintly, and shook her head. "You want to find out his identity? I'm afraid it's a little difficult. Also, since he already knows and told you, there's nothing to worry about. He has helped me so many times. If he wanted to deal with me, why would he need to spend so much effort? That person's strength and background are both extremely strong. From today onwards, don't waste any more time and energy investigating him." Qi Han was a little surprised. Just who was that person to make His Highness so fearful? Judging from His Highness' tone, he seems to be somewhat familiar with that person. Your Highness knows that person? No, I don't. Chu Liyue said straightforwardly. She actually wanted to know the identity of the first master more than anyone else, but the other party clearly didn't want her to know, so why should she waste her energy? When it was time to know, he would know. Since Chu Liyue had said so, Qi Han naturally did as he was told. Where are the other members of the 13 Yu Guard? Looking at the agitated and angry elder Zhong Yi, Yi Zhiding became suspicious as he exchanged glances with Emperor Juan. Could it be? It really wasn't him? There's no harm in telling you, today, there's someone who entered the Blessing Palace before this old man. Also, he even attacked Xingqian. He crippled one of her shoulders and one of her legs. When Elder Yi heard this, he immediately knitted his brows and carefully looked at Situ Xingqian, who had fainted on the floor. This injury wasn't caused by Emperor Jianghu? Emperor Jianghu also realized that something was amiss. He immediately stepped forward and stared at Elder Zhongyi. Who is it? Elder Zhongyi sneered. You all know this person too, Chu Liwei. Impossible. Old man Yi denied it without thinking. How could this be done by his precious disciple? How is it impossible? This was something Xing Chen had said herself. Yi Jiding, Chu Liwei is your disciple, right? She came and left so smoothly today. Could it be that you're secretly helping her? Bullsh *T. Yi Jiding directly swore. How can you believe Situ Xingchen's words? She had a grudge with my disciple long ago. She must have taken the chance to frame her. Elder Zhongyi chuckled in disdain and looked at Emperor Jianghu. Xingchen also said that Chu Liwei stole something from her. It's up to you whether to believe it or not. Digression, I'm going out for a while and I'm updating at night. A better reading experience comes from my Yuan. Chapter 434. Hearing this, Elder Yi thought that this was bad. Didn't His Majesty also want to find something from Situ Xingchen? Since Zhongyi said this, he might be suspicious. As expected, he turned around and saw Emperor Jianghu knitting his brows as if he were suspicious. Elder Yi immediately asked, Zhongyi, why are you here? Zhongyi, since this is the case, tell me what Liwei stole from Situ Xingchen. Emperor Jianghu also held his breath. Zhongyi was stumped. Situ Xingchen didn't even have the time to tell me. However, I'm sure that it's what Emperor Jianghu wants from Situ Xingchen when he locked her up. His eyes sparkled as he looked at Emperor Jianghu. Emperor Jianghu, you should know best what she stole, right? Elder Yi sneered. Zhongyi clearly doesn't know. He might even be making it up. Emperor Jianghu kept quiet for a while and glanced at the unconscious Situ Xingchen. I'll talk to her about this personally when she wakes up. Elder Zhongyi immediately became alert. What do you mean? I mean that before the matter is investigated, I'll have to trouble Elder Zhongyi and Situ Xingchen to stay here for a while. Oh, right, Rong Jin and Situ Xingchen's wedding is being prepared. As Situ Xingchen's elder, it's good for you to attend as well. Then, Emperor Jianghu raised his feet and planned to leave. How dare you? Elder Zhongyi was stunned by his words. In a moment of desperation, he directly shouted Emperor Jianghu's name. Who is that Rong Jin? How can he be worthy of Xingchen? If you insist, don't blame me for being rude. Emperor Jianghu stood still and sneered. I'm calling you Elder Zhongyi on account of Mingyue Tianshan. However, this doesn't mean that I'm afraid of you. You're not the only strong person in Mingyue Tianshan. Elder Zhongyi's chest tightened. You've caused such a huge commotion tonight, so you'll definitely attract a lot of attention. Elder Zhongyi, you're a smart person. If you're willing to cooperate, I'll take it that nothing happened today. But if you don't agree, don't blame me for being merciless. One Situ Yen wasn't enough. Did they think that with Zhongyi, everything would be fine? Elder Yi stroked his beard. I remember that it has indeed been a period of time since I went to Mingyue Tianshan. Looks like I should find some time to go back and pay him a visit. Elder Zhongyi was so angry that his face turned red. He never thought that he would be threatened by Emperor Jianghu and Yi Jiding. However, this was indeed his weakness. He couldn't bear the punishment of Mingyue Tianshan. If he forced his way through, it wasn't like he couldn't leave this place. But in that case, only Situ Xingchen would be left here. He was truly worried. Thus, after Elder Zhongyi's expression changed several times, he finally gritted his teeth and admitted defeat. He glared at Elder Yi. Yi Jiding, don't be smug too early. In this old man's opinion, that precious disciple of yours is very scheming. Who knows when I'll screw you over, and you won't even know. Elder Yi smiled and said, Zhongyi, as an outsider, you don't have to worry about the matters between us. If you have the time, you should take more care of Situ Xingchen. If this injury drags on for too long, it'll leave behind repercussions. You. But I haven't seen you for a few years, and your skills don't seem to have improved. You should take this chance to reflect properly. After Elder Yi said that, he immediately snapped his fingers. Countless white feathers instantly released a strong force and forcefully separated the two of them. Then they quickly gathered. "Elder Yi, I'm afraid we'll have to trouble you these few days," said Emperor Juan. Elder Yi nodded. Situ Xingshan was still manageable, but Elder Zhongyi, only Elder Yi could suppress him. Elder Yi waved his hands. "I've long found him an eyesore, so I'll take my revenge this time." "What do you think of what he said previously?" Emperor Joan hesitated for a while and finally said honestly, "I think it might be possible." Elder Yi knitted his brows. "Does this mean that your Majesty really suspects Lu Yu?" Emperor Jiawen smiled bitterly and shook his head. "I have no choice. Others don't know how important that thing is, but you know it best, Elder Yi. I'm not doing this for myself, but for the entire Yaochen." Elder Yi thought for a while. "Why don't I go and ask him directly?" Emperor Jiawen thought carefully and instantly felt that this seemed to be the best choice. "I've always liked Chu Luiyue. On one hand, she's Rong Xiu's fiancée now. If I touch her, Rong Xiu definitely won't be willing. On the other hand, there's also Mu Qinghe. Then, I'll have to trouble you, Elder Yi." The fire in the palace burned for the entire night. It was only completely extinguished when the sun rose the next morning. The entire Blessing Palace had been completely burned down, and even the surrounding halls had become ruins. Quite a few palace servants had also lost their lives. It was rumored that the Blessing Palace had not been maintained for a long time, so it accidentally caught fire and caused this fire. Actually, anyone with eyes would know that the greenish-white fire wasn't an ordinary fire. It was most likely caused by phosphor powder. Ordinary people didn't even have this thing. It was obvious that this matter had deep implications. However, since the palace had already given an explanation, nobody would be so insensible as to investigate further. However, the Blessing Palace used to be Rong Jin's residence. Now that he was just crippled, such a fire started. It was hard not to think too much. This time, he clearly didn't have a chance to turn things around. Princely Mansion. Early in the morning, Eunuch Min personally came over and said that His Majesty had summoned Rong Xiu to the palace. Everyone in Princely Mansion was very surprised. His Majesty had always thought highly of Rong Xiu. Considering that his body wasn't well, he rarely let him enter the palace. Today, this meeting came out of the blue. However, Rong Xiu didn't seem to think too much. After simply packing up, he put on a black cloak and followed Eunuch Min into the palace. Emperor Juan was waiting in the imperial study. "Father." When he saw Rong Xiu enter and wanted to bow, Emperor Juan immediately said, "There's no need for that. You don't have to be so formal. I called you here today because I have a few things to ask you." Rong Xiu's jade-like face was as gentle as usual. "I'll tell you everything I know." Emperor Jiawen opened his mouth, but he hesitated in his heart. Rong Xiu was his most beloved son. For so many years, he felt very guilty that he couldn't accompany Rong Xiu by his side. Hence, after Rong Xiu came back, he had been thinking of ways to make it up to him. Asking him this question now, it's unavoidably inappropriate. Rong Xiu quietly stood there as if he didn't see Emperor Jiawen's dilemma. After a while, Emperor Jiawen finally clenched his teeth and made up his mind. He asked, "Rong Xiu, when the palace was on fire last night, something went missing. Someone said that it was Lu Yu who did it. What do you think?" Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from iYuan. Chapter 435. If other people were here and heard this, they would definitely be shocked. This matter has a lot of implications, yet Emperor Jiawen directly asked about it. This shows how much he trusts Rong Xiu. Rong Xiu widened his eyes, and shock flashed across his eyes. "Father, did you call me here just for this?" Emperor Jiawen looked at him solemnly and didn't say anything. Rong Xiu's lips curved up slightly, and a light flashed across his eyes. "Father, are you suspicious of Yue?" Emperor Jiawen rubbed his glabella. "Rong Xiu, you've always been the smartest." He had to admit that Elder Zhong Ye's words did make him waver. Last night, he almost didn't sleep well for the entire night as he kept thinking about this. Why did it have to be Chu Luiyue out of so many people? Besides, judging from Chu Liuyue's various shocking performances during this period of time, she might really be hiding some secrets. Even though Elder Yi had already promised to personally ask Chu Liuyue, he was still worried. However, Chu Liuyue's identity was special, so he couldn't and wasn't willing to touch her easily. Hence, he could only ask Rong Xiu to come. Rong Xiu thought for a moment and suddenly said, "There's a problem. Father, you don't seem to know about it." Emperor Jiawen sat up slightly. Rong Xiu still had a smile on his face, but there was a playful look between his brows. "Sidu Xingchen? She admired me for many years." Emperor Jiawen was instantly dazed. Very quickly, he understood something. Could it be that Situ Xingchen is especially hostile towards Chu Liuyue because of this? Emperor Jiawen slowly knitted his brows. Even so, she shouldn't purposely frame you. After all, she already had a marriage agreement with Rong Jin. What good does it do her to provoke Chu Liuyue? Rong Xiu's smile deepened, but it was tainted with a layer of coldness. Imperial father knows best what is going on with the engagement between her and Imperial brother. Emperor Jiawen fell into deep thought. I don't know if father still remembers that I went to the arena on the last day of the Qingjiao competition. Emperor Jiawen nodded. Of course I do. That day, I originally wanted to ask you for help, but I met Sidu Xingchen off stage. This son inadvertently discovered that her sleeves were embroidered with cloud patterns that were almost exactly the same as this son's. Rong Xiu's tone was slightly cold. Emperor Jiawen's heart thumped. In the past, Rong Xiu really loved that strange cloud pattern. Many of his clothes were embroidered with that pattern. Maybe it's just a coincidence? After I returned that day, I thought about it and felt a little uncomfortable, so I ordered the servants in the manor to burn all the clothes with that cloud pattern. Emperor Jiawen's expression changed. He had some recollection of this incident, but he didn't pay much attention to it back then. He just thought that Rong Xiu wanted to throw all the clothes away because he had just recovered from a serious illness and wanted to change his mood. He didn't expect this to be the reason behind it. That day, Sidu Xingchen also arrived outside Princely Mansion and saw this scene. After leaving, she went to a remote alley and personally killed a few cultivators. She dismembered their corpses and chopped them into a pile of mush. Only then did she stop. Rong Xiu spoke slowly, but the content made one's heart skip a beat. Father, do you think that this is also a coincidence? Emperor Jiawen finally couldn't sit still and suddenly stood up. What did you find out about this? Rong Xiu calmly smiled. Father, if I don't even know who went to Princely Mansion and what kind of attitude they had toward me in the imperial city, how can I continue living? Emperor Jiawen looked at him with a complicated gaze and didn't say anything for a while. Yeah, I almost forgot. Even though Rong Xiu's body was weak, he was very smart. He had stayed in Mingyue Tianshan for so many years. If he didn't even have this bit of ability, it would really disappoint him. Those few people usually hang around the various casinos and brothels in the imperial city, and they usually attract a lot of hate. After they died, nobody cared about them. This incident was suppressed just like that. However, if you want to confirm it, it's very easy. You don't have to say anything. I believe you. Emperor Jiawen tiredly waved his hands and leaned against the chair. Rong Xiu kept quiet. The room fell into silence once again. Emperor Jiawen's thoughts were in turmoil. Anyone would be able to tell that something was wrong with this matter. For so many years, Sidu Xingchen had always been high and mighty, gentle, and elegant in everyone's eyes. But from this incident, it was obvious that she wasn't like that at all. In actual fact, after interacting with Situ Xingchen these few days, he already had this feeling in his heart. However, he didn't expect her to be even more vicious than he imagined. Linking all of these incidents together, many doubts were instantly resolved. This means that Situ Xingchen purposely targeted Lu Yu several times because her love turned into hatred? In this case, there would be a logical explanation for Situ Xingchen's involvement in Rong Zhen's incident and her accusation of Chu Liuyue for no reason. Rong Xiu lightly smiled. I didn't say that. Father, you have your own judgment of who's right and who's wrong. Emperor Jiawen opened his eyes and looked at Rong Xiu with a deep gaze. I didn't expect that the first time you chose to confess to me was because of Chu Liuyue. By saying all of this, Wuxia was undoubtedly admitting that he had his own power in the imperial city. He was far from being as aloof from worldly affairs as he had shown before. He definitely knew that this was a huge taboo for emperors. "Aren't you worried that I'll be wary of you?" asked Emperor Jianghu word for word. The sunlight shone in from the window and reflected in Wuxia's eyes. He said, "I'm just choosing the more important option after weighing the two options. And I'm his most important and only choice." Almost at the same time, Chu Luiyue was waiting for Elder Yi in her yard. So many things happened the night before, so Situ Xingshan would definitely point me out and expose everything to Emperor Juan. Thus, I was already prepared. However, I didn't expect it to be my mentor. Chu Luiyue smiled and went up to him. "Mentor, what brings you here?" Elder Yi looked at her and suddenly asked in shock. When did you break through and become a rank 3 warrior? If I didn't remember wrongly, didn't this girl just become a stage 2 warrior during the Qingjiao competition? Why did she become so fast? Moreover, the aura on her body seemed to be different from before. If Elder Yi carefully checked Chu Luiyue's Yuan Meridian, he would know that this slight change was caused by the upgrade of her Yuan Meridian. Chu Luiyue's eyes curved into crescents. "I just broke through 2 days ago. I learned quite a lot at Tai Yen Academy's library, so I tried to break through recently. As expected, I succeeded." Elder Yi thought about it and felt that it made sense. He had long known that Chu Luiyue had a lot of force in her body, so it was only a matter of time before she broke through. "You're indeed my disciple." "Ha!" Upon seeing Elder Ye's happy face, Chu Luiyue's lips curled up, and she seemingly reminded him unintentionally, "Why are you here today? Is there a reason why you came to find me today?" Elder Ye's laughter suddenly stopped. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 436. Actually, he wasn't willing to make this trip. Chu Luiyue was his only disciple, and he couldn't wait to dote on her, let alone question her. But if he didn't ask, he wouldn't be able to answer to Emperor Juan. After much thought, it was more suitable for him to do it. Elder Yi coughed. "Girl, where were you last night?" Chu Luiyue blinked. "Of course, I was at home. If not, where else could I be?" Old Mr. Yi carefully observed her expression. He always knew that Chu Luiyue was stronger than what she showed. At the very least, she was above his standards in terms of medicine refinement. He knew very well that this girl had many secrets. But he didn't want to suspect her because of this. "You should know that there was a fire in the palace yesterday, right?" Chu Luiyue nodded and smiled. "It's hard not to know about such a big fire, mentor." Elder Yi thought for a while and finally asked directly, "What happened last night? What happened yesterday? Did it have anything to do with you?" Chu Luiyue blinked. "What do you mean?" Elder Yi stared at her closely, and after a while, he couldn't help but slap his thigh. "I knew that Situ Xingshan did it on purpose. Tell me, what exactly happened? Why did she want to kill you?" Chu Luiyue was speechless. Even though she knew that Elder Yi would side with her, this was too straightforward. Chu Luiyue lightly coughed. "It's a long story. Make it short." He still has to rush back to discuss this with Emperor Juan. Chu Luiyue shrugged. "She thinks that I snatched her man." Elder Ye's expression instantly became strange, and he was even a little speechless. "Wuxia." Chu Luiyue nodded. "Situ Xingshan personally told me last night. How could it be wrong?" Elder Yi suddenly took a step back and sized up Chu Luiyue. "Mentor, what are you looking at?" asked Chu Luiyue strangely. Elder Yi suddenly chuckled. No wonder. So, it's because of this that Situ Xingshan kept trying to drag you down." Chu Luiyue's eyes twitched. For some reason, she seemed to hear a whiff of smugness. "Enough. Master already knows. Just focus on your cultivation at home. There was no need to care about anything else." Old Man Yi said and turned to leave. Suddenly, he turned his head and asked, "By the way, did Mu Qinghe say when she was leaving?" Mu Qinghe's eyes moved slightly, but she quickly suppressed the slight ripples and shook her head gently. "Not yet. But it should be soon." Mu Qinghe had gained nothing from the trip to the Imperial Mausoleum, so she definitely wouldn't stay for long. Old Man Yi nodded. His expression became more serious as he warned, going to the Tianling dynasty is a great opportunity. You must make good use of it. But the rest of his words were stuck in his throat. Elder Yi hesitated for a while and finally swallowed them back down. If you want to leave, you must inform Master in advance. Chu Luiwen nodded. Today was the day of the Empress's funeral. Originally, everything was well prepared, but the sudden fire in the Blessing and Harmony Palace caused everyone to be in a state of panic. Even though Emperor Jianghu was very sad, he still decided to keep the Empress's funeral simple. In the end, only the noble consort's funeral was held. Emperor Jianghu collapsed from excessive worry, so he couldn't attend the Empress's funeral. Rong Jin suffered consecutive blows and was bedridden. He didn't even leave Crown Prince Mansion's doors. Oh, now that the plaque had been removed, it couldn't be considered Crown Prince Mansion anymore. In the end, only Prince Ping, Rong Qi, and Rong Zhen went. But out of the two of them, one had been a rich man's son for many years and didn't have any real power, while the other had a shattered pearl of essence and was completely useless. Even if they were added together, they didn't have much of a presence. As for the Xi family, only a few people went. The Empress's entire funeral was very simple. It started in a hurry and ended in a hurry. At this point, everyone could tell that Emperor Jianghu did this on purpose. As the Empress, she was the country's mother. After her death, she should hold a national funeral to show her status. But now, the funeral wasn't even as grand as a consort's. If the Empress didn't do something to anger His Majesty when she was alive, why would she have such an ending after her death? All sorts of rumors circulated on the streets, but they all silently disappeared in the end. Not long later, the crowd threw the Empress's death to the back of their minds and started discussing another matter. The Crown Prince position is empty, and His Majesty will definitely choose a new Crown Prince from the few princes. Emperor Jianghu didn't have many sons, but there weren't many who were suitable to be the Crown Prince. After much discussion, the crowd finally realized that the best candidate was the third prince, Rong Jiao. In terms of capabilities, he entered the Northwest Army and fought on the battlefield for many years. He had many outstanding military achievements. In terms of age, he was in his prime. He was also the second-ranked prince after Rong Jin. Other than his low birth status, he had almost no flaws. Almost everyone was certain that Rong Jiao would become the new crown prince. But the current Rong Jiao wasn't so optimistic. This was because he had already been locked up in the residence for a few days. The Empress's funeral had already ended, but father still hadn't let him go. This inevitably made Rong Jiao worried. At this point, he suddenly heard that father urgently summoned Rong Jin into the palace. It seemed like the two of them had talked for a long time in the imperial study. The longer he waited, the more uneasy Rong Jiao felt. Finally, on this day, someone came to the palace. The Empress was killed by the third prince, Rong Jiao. From today onwards, he will be locked up in the heavenly prison and await his punishment. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from AI Net. Chapter 437. A stone stirred up 1,000 ripples. Rong Jiao was originally the most suitable crown prince among the few princes, and many people had already secretly started thinking about how to get close to him. They didn't expect him to be imprisoned for such a heinous crime overnight. At that moment, the entire imperial city changed. I heard that the third prince's birth mother, noble Lady Ying, was harmed by the Empress back then. He held a grudge for many years, so he took action against her. Who knows about the harem? But even if it's true, the third prince is too impulsive. As long as he can become the crown prince, he can do whatever he wants. Why did he have to take action at this juncture? After the Northwest Army came back, His Majesty didn't let him go back for a long time, so he's naturally anxious. Besides, the Empress's funeral was so simple. Can't you see the problem? Even if His Majesty hates the Empress, he can't let the third prince kill her. He deserves it. These few princes are either crippled, locked up, or sick. If this continues, there's nothing to pick on. When Chu Liwei walked past the streets, She could vaguely hear some whispers. Even though they weren't allowed to talk about it openly, it was hard for people not to notice with so many things happening in the palace. When she arrived at Princely Mansion, she realized that the security here was obviously much tighter. Chu Luiwei raised her eyebrows slightly. The entire imperial city was in chaos, and it wasn't easy for Princely Mansion to stay out of it. Seeing Chu Luiwei, the guards at the door hurriedly welcomed her. "Ms. Luyu, you're finally here. His Highness has been waiting for you for a while." Chu Luiyue's lips curled up slightly as she walked in. When she saw Rong Xiu, he was taking a nap in the backyard's bamboo forest. On the stone table were 2 cups of freshly brewed tea and a half-finished chess game. A light breeze blew over, and a few green bamboo leaves landed on Rong Xiu's snow-white robe, making him look even colder and more noble. "Your Highness, you knew I was coming?" Chu Luiwei brushed away the leaves in front of his eyes and walked over. Rong Xiu picked up the porcelain cup that was as clear as jade. A white mist rose in spirals, making it almost impossible to see the expression in his deep eyes. His scarlet lips curled up slightly, and his smile was as gentle and calm as ever. "This is the tea that I personally brewed. Let's see how it compares to yours." Chu Luiwei sat down and picked up another cup. A strong fragrance wafted over, lingering at the tip of his nose, refreshing his mind. Chu Luiwei took a sip. After the faint bitterness, there was a sweet aftertaste. She nodded honestly. "Your Highness' cooking skills are much better than mine." Compared to him, the ones she had picked up were really not worth mentioning. Rong Xiu smiled and shook his head. "But this prince only likes Yu's ginger tea." "The tea is good, but I don't like it." Chu Luiwei glared at him. "Your Highness is still in the mood to joke at a time like this?" "That's exactly what I was thinking." Rong Xiu raised his brows. "Also, what do you mean by this time?" Chu Luiwei narrowed his eyes. "The entire imperial city is in a mess, but only this person can leisurely brew tea and play chess in his own backyard. He's really calm." She shook her head and cut to the chase. "You already knew that His Majesty was going to do something to the third prince?" Previously, Rong Xiu had mentioned that someone wanted to frame Rong Jiu and blame him for the Empress's death. However, Chu Luiwei never expected that person to be Emperor Jiuan. No matter what, Rong Jiu is his biological son. His actions are no different from sending Rong Jiu to his death. Rong Xiu's expression didn't change, and his lips curled up into a casual smile. "Since you know what's going on, why do you have to ask me? This is an admission." Chu Luiwei knitted his brows and was still confused. "But why did His Majesty do this? If he didn't want Rong Jiu to inherit the throne, he had many ways. At the very least, Rong Jiu was trapped in the imperial city and had almost all of his military power confiscated. He couldn't do anything. Besides, Rong Jiu had fought on the battlefield for many years and had many achievements. Even without his identity as a prince, his contributions were still significant. Why must Emperor Jiuan be so ruthless? His Majesty knows that the person who killed the Empress is Situ Xingqian. Until now, this news had been tightly sealed. Are you suspecting that father is siding with Situ Xingqian?" asked Rong Xiu with interest. Chu Luiwei shook his head. Judging from the situation that night, Emperor Jiuan definitely didn't want to let Situ Xingqian off. He just wanted to get something from her. However, there's really no need to frame Rong Jiu for the Empress's death. She knew very well that the royal family was heartless, and she even had an unforgettable painful memory. However, Emperor Jiuan clearly had other motives for doing this. Rong Xiu smiled lightly. If he knows his place and is an idle prince in the imperial city, father naturally won't do anything to him. He can make father decide to do this. Looking at his meaningful expression, Chu Luiwei suddenly understood something. "Your Highness, you mean that the third prince?" Rong Xiu placed a chess piece down. Chu Luiwei looked down, and his heart skipped a beat. Once this piece was placed, the originally deadlocked black and white chess pieces on the chessboard instantly broke the stalemate. They crazily fought each other. Rong Jiu actually wants to rebel? If not, I really can't think of any other reason for Emperor Jiuan to do this. "Your Highness, how did you know?" Once Chu Luiwei asked this, he couldn't help but regret it. As long as Rong Xiu wants to, he can know everything. However, Rong Xiu's expression became strange. Chu Luiyue looked at his eyes and suddenly widened her eyes in shock as she thought of something. Could it be? Rong Xiu looked at her with a deep gaze, and his lips suddenly curved up as he waved at her. Come over. Chu Luiyue stood up in confusion and walked over. Rong Xiu held her hand, pulled her into his embrace, and tightly hugged her as he bent down and kissed her. Chu Luiyue was taken aback, and her heart trembled slightly from his scorching aura. What's wrong with this person? Why is he so sudden? Why, Your Highness? Chu Luiyue pushed his shoulders, but he hugged her waist very tightly as if he wanted to embed her in his embrace. Rong Xiu only stopped when he kissed her until her limbs turned weak and she melted into a puddle of spring water in his arms. He then switched to a light kiss. Chu Luiyue looked at him, and her eyes that were as bright as the night sky became moist, as if a pinch would overflow with sweetness. Rong Xiu's eyes flashed, and he reached out to cover her eyes. He moved closer to her ear and said in a low and hoarse voice, as if something was rubbing against his heart, "Don't look at this prince like that." Chu Luiyue's ears also heated up. "Your Highness, you knows this prince best." Rong Xiu suddenly couldn't help but bite her delicate earlobe. Chu Luiyue felt itchy, but her body went soft. Rong Xiu buried his face in her neck and closed his eyes. She always knew what he was thinking. From the past to the present. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 438. Chu Luiyue naturally didn't know what Rong Xiu was thinking. His hot breath landed on her neck and behind her ears, making her feel itchy. The breeze blew, and the bamboo forest swayed. Chu Luiyue instantly became much more awake. No wonder Rong Xiu kept looking at the entire imperial city's military strength distribution. It turns out that he had long been preparing for this day. Rong Xiu had stayed in the imperial city for a few months and didn't even leave the city. Now that he suddenly decided to rebel, someone was clearly adding fuel to the fire. And this person was Rong Xiu. "Your Highness, when did you start planning all this?" Chu Luiyue couldn't help but ask. Rong Xiu's low voice sounded by her ear. "Oh, it's quite early. When did third brother go to the Northwest Army?" His tone was casual and calm, as if this was just a small matter. Chu Luiyue was shocked and pushed him away. She looked back and stared at Rong Xiu in disbelief with her black eyes. "Your Highness, you mean, but he didn't ask to go." Chu Luiyue's words stopped abruptly. Suddenly, an extremely absurd idea appeared in her mind. Rong Xiu saw her rare shocked look, and a smile flashed across his eyes. It's not easy to see her reveal such an expression. Seeing his expression, Chu Luiyue opened her mouth, but she didn't say a word. What else do I have to say? He's clearly admitting it. All these years, Rong Xiu's every move was actually under Rong Xiu's control. No matter if it was his determination to join the army after being bullied by the Empress and the Crown Prince, his outstanding military achievements, or his current situation where he had nowhere to go, it was clearly all in Rong Xiu's plan. But it's dangerous to nurture a tiger. Now, Rong Xiu wants to go against Emperor Juan, but he'll definitely become Rong Xiu in the end. Chu Luiyue's heart was in turmoil, and she finally couldn't help but ask, "Did you tell His Majesty that the third prince was going to rebel?" Rong Xiu's brows moved slightly. "You're underestimating father. Since third imperial brother had done this, how could imperial father not have noticed? I don't have much to do with this matter. I'd be a fool if I believed you." Chu Luiyue cursed in her heart. Perhaps Rong Xiu also had a part to play in Rong Xiu's plan to attack. Third prince doesn't know about this? Rong Xiu raised his brows slightly. "What do you think?" Chu Luiyue gasped and slapped her forehead. "My brain short-circuited too. If Rong Xiu knew it, the Northwest Army's 5,000 elites are about to reach the imperial city." Rong Xiu gently caressed her slender and soft waist as he nonchalantly said, "As for when they'll fight, it depends on father and third brother. According to Rong Xiu's personality, they shouldn't wait for long. Besides, father will punish Rongjio in the next few days. Chu Lue put her hand down, opened her eyes, and looked at him. Isn't all of this in your hands, your highness? Today, everything is under Rongjio's control. Rongjio chuckled. If I didn't hear wrongly, are you praising me? Chu Lue was speechless. Is the praise more important than the matter itself? Country Yao Chen is about to change. However, Rongjio didn't seem to care about it. Looking at her shocked and confused face, Rongjio laughed for a while before finally saying, Don't worry. Don't worry, Lord Chuning will be leaving the imperial capital with a group of people today to investigate some matters. If the Imperial Guards and the Northwest Army fight, Lord Chuning won't be implicated. Did he purposely send father away from me? Her conversation with Rongjio contained too much joy. Chu Liuyue's mind was filled with thoughts, and she didn't know what to say for a moment. She looked at Rongjio with a complicated gaze. This man was devilishly handsome, extremely talented, and terrifyingly scheming. But he just had to be so honest with her that she didn't know how to face him. He had plotted for so many years and played such a big game of chess, yet he told her so easily? Your Highness, aren't you worried that I'll tell others about this? Asked Chu Luyue with knitted brows. Rongjio looked at her in shock as if she had asked a very stupid question. Which woman in this world would put the man she loves in danger? Chu Luyue was speechless. There doesn't seem to be anything wrong with this sentence, but why does it sound so strange? Chu Luyue stuttered, and her usually eloquent tongue seemed to be in a knot at this point. After a while, she finally decided to give up and not harp on this matter. However, she still had the strangest and most important question. Your Highness, why are you doing this? One was his father and the other was his brother. In their bones, the same blood flowed in their veins. Rongjio's actions were equivalent to starting a fight between Emperor Jiuan and Rongjio. A war was about to break out. No matter who won or lost in the end, what was the point to Rongjio? Rongjio thought for a moment and chuckled. Oh, I just felt that it was too troublesome to fight for it, so I found someone to do it for me. Chu Luyue was dazed. He did it for me? He's talking about fighting for the throne, right? How can he replace something like this? Besides, the most important thing is that if Rongjio really wanted the throne, why did he have to pretend to be sick for so many years? According to Emperor Jiuan's love for him, as long as Rongjio displayed his true abilities, no, just a small portion of his abilities, Emperor Jiuan would definitely make him the crown prince. Chu Luyue actually wanted to ask, but for some reason she had a strong feeling that it was best not to ask. Rongjio must have his reasons for doing this. After reacting for a while, Chu Luyue finally found her voice. But if that's the case, won't the throne be the third prince's? A faint smile appeared on Rongjio's face, but there was an indescribable suppression in his eyes. He slowly said, Who do you think helped third brother contact the Northwest Army and made him take the last pill of confidence and decide to mobilize the army? Of course, it's my people. Emperor Jiuan gathered all the officials to discuss Rongjio's punishment. After an intense debate, they finally came to a conclusion. The third prince, Rongjio, has committed treason. He took the chance when Emperor Jiuan asked him to take care of the empress, harmed the empress, and tried to destroy the corpse. His crimes are utterly devoid of conscience, and the heavens cannot tolerate it. He will be beheaded at the Meridian Gate. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 439. Early in the morning, the imperial city's streets and alleys were filled with people. Whether it was out of curiosity, pity, or some other reason, everyone rushed to the Meridian Gate. The execution ground was tightly guarded by armored imperial guards. Rongjio had not been brought over, but the surroundings were already filled with people. It was very noisy. This third prince has made great contributions in the Northwest Army a few years ago. He's very impressive. Who would have thought that he would become a prisoner in the blink of an eye? His achievements are enough to intimidate the emperor. He hasn't even stepped out of the imperial city's gates these few months. Isn't it obvious what the higher-ups are thinking? From what I see, the crime is fake and the execution is real. But among the remaining princes, the third prince is the most suitable candidate for the crown prince. Isn't it too heartless to do this? How much do we know about the palace? Anyway, that person is still in his prime. After a few more years, the princes below him will also grow up, right? It's a pity that the third prince's birth mother has already passed away, and he doesn't have a high status. At this time, there's no one who can help him. The crowd discussed fervently, and they had different opinions about this matter. However, everyone knew that everything was already set in stone by now. Time passed bit by bit, and the sun gradually rose to the middle of the sky. Suddenly, the originally noisy crowd quietened down. The crowd split into two sides, and a path opened up. Everyone seemed to have sensed something, and they all looked over at the same time. A group of people on horses walked over. The person in front was the Si family head, Si Yi. He was clearly here today to supervise the execution. Compared to the past, the current Si Yi looked much more haggard. His cheeks were deeply sunken, and his eyes were bloodshot. It was obvious that the things that happened during this period of time had a big impact on him. After all, the Empress, Si Huijing, was his biological sister. He had just finished the Empress's funeral, and he had to come here immediately after. He didn't even have time to rest. Si Yi walked forward step by step. He could clearly feel the countless gazes around him landing on his body. But in actual fact, his body and mind were numb. Originally, he didn't want to come, but His Majesty had given the order, so he could only follow it. A prison wagon slowly followed behind him. The disheveled man in the metal cage was the current third prince, Rongjio, who was wearing a prisoner's uniform and had his hands locked. He was forced to kneel there with his head slightly lowered. His messy hair fell down and covered most of his face. However, everyone could still vaguely see his current expression. Indifferent and cold. His body even carried a valiant aura that could only be obtained after experiencing life and death on the battlefield. In short, there was no trace of panic or despair. Around the prison cart, there were also imperial guards following closely. However, all those people combined couldn't even compare to Rongjio's aura. Probably affected by some kind of emotion, the places where the prisoner carriage passed by became incomparably quiet. The people standing in front of him even unconsciously took a step back. This Third Highness, for some reason, looked a bit inexplicably scary. When they arrived at the execution ground, Si Yi raised his hand and the prison cart finally stopped. "Bring him here." With an order, the imperial guards at the side immediately went forward and brought Rongjio out of the metal cage. Two extremely sharp swords were pressed against Rongjio's neck as they brought him to the execution ground in the middle. From start to end, Rongjio's expression didn't change much. But when he stood still at the execution ground, he suddenly looked up and glanced in the direction of the palace as mockery flashed across his eyes. It seems like Father won't change his decision. Today, he was determined to put him to death. Rongjio retracted his gaze and looked down to hide the murderous intent in his eyes. Unless it was his last resort, he actually didn't want to do this. However, he had been on the battlefield for many years and had experienced countless life and death situations. He didn't expect that he would end up with such an outcome. Anyone would feel hopeless if they were in his shoes. "Hurry up and kneel," yelled the person behind Rongjio impatiently as he harshly kicked Rongjio's knees. However, Rongjio didn't kneel down from the kick. His physical body was as hard as a piece of steel. Seeing that Rongjio didn't kneel down as he wanted, the man who kicked him was shocked. Rongjio slowly turned around and glanced at him. The man immediately felt guilty under her gaze, and an inexplicable trace of fear appeared in his heart. Then he frowned and hollered, "What? What are you looking at? Do you think you're the high and mighty third prince? He's just a criminal on death row, yet he's still so arrogant when he's about to die. Kneel down." That man gave the person beside him a look, and the two of them exerted their strength. The two long swords instantly slit Rongjio's neck, and red blood slowly seeped out. The last bit of hesitation in Rongjio's heart finally disappeared. He slightly bent his knees as if he was really going to kneel down. However, in the next moment, his body suddenly leaped up and kicked the two people closest to him. His actions were too fast, and the two of them didn't even have time to react before they were harshly kicked away by Rongjio. Siyi immediately realized something and hollered, "Capture! Capture him! Rongjio actually wants to escape." The surrounding crowd also reacted at this point and rushed forward. An enormous figure suddenly appeared above Rongjio's head. Siyi looked over and was shocked. It was a fourth-grade fiend, a white thatched falcon. While that white thatched falcon suddenly spread its wings. Rongjio flipped over and jumped onto it. "Go!" Following a clear cry, the white thatched falcon flapped its wings and flew into the sky. At this point, the surrounding crowd finally understood that it was Rongjio's fiend. When he was locked up in the prison, he didn't have anything else on him other than his prison clothes. But they actually forgot that he had his own fiend. Rongjio had been very low profile these few months in the Imperial City, so they actually forgot that he had such a trump card. Even though this white thatched falcon was a fourth-grade fiend, it was ferocious and had strong combat skills. It was almost considered the top among the fourth-grade fiends. The human and fiends figures quickly flew into the distance. Siyi immediately said, "Prepare! Prepare your bows." The many Imperial guards immediately took out the bows on their backs and aimed at Rongjio in midair. However, right at this moment, a few figures suddenly charged out from the crowd, and they charged towards the Imperial guards. Choo-choo! Messy air-piercing sounds were heard, and many of them deviated from their original directions. They didn't even touch the edges of the white thatched falcon's wings. Siyi looked at the people who suddenly rushed over in shock and anger, and he suddenly widened his eyes in shock. They actually took the initiative to use their killer move. They came prepared. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 440. The crowd instantly fell into chaos. Those people were wearing very normal clothes, and they looked no different from the commoners who were here to join in the fun. It was precisely because of this that their actions were especially sudden. Siyi roughly glanced at them, and there were at least hundreds of them. These people were clearly here for Rongjio. More importantly, from the ruthless moves of these people, it was obvious that they were trained on the battlefield. Siyi suddenly understood something and gasped. Rongjio actually mobilized the Northwest Army to save me. Didn't they say that he handed over his military power after returning to the Imperial City and didn't contact the Northwest Army again? What exactly is going on with these people's appearance? In just an instant, screams, weapons clashing, and the sound of sharp weapons piercing into flesh were all mixed together. Countless people screamed and escaped. Siyi was about to chase after Rongjio when two people suddenly rushed over from the side and directly blocked his path. The next moment, they actually attacked before Siyi did. Siyi was forced into a chaotic battle. The two parties had just exchanged a few moves, and he knew that things were bad. These people all killed their way out of a pile of corpses. Even if their cultivation levels weren't as high as his, they were the best at killing people. Once they attacked, every move was fatal. There were no tricks at all. In the midst of the chaos, Siyi looked around and realized that things were exactly as he had expected. The Imperial Guards, who had the advantage in numbers, were gradually at a disadvantage. He flung something out of his sleeves without hesitation. Bang! A signal shot up to the sky. At the same time, Emperor Jianghu was reading something alone in the Imperial study. But after taking 2 glances, he stopped and rubbed his glabella. Calculating the time, it should be about time. Suddenly, Eunuch Min's anxious voice was heard from outside the door. "Your Majesty! Your Majesty! Something happened." Emperor Jianghu's heart skipped a beat as he walked over and personally opened the door. He frowned and asked, "What exactly happened?" Eunuch Min was shocked as he hurriedly took a step back and knelt down. "Your Majesty, the third prince ran away." Emperor Jianghu's expression turned even colder. "What do you mean he ran away?" What is Yi doing? Where are the imperial guards? Eunuch Min wiped away the cold sweat on his forehead and quickly said in a trembling voice, "That's right. Your Majesty, someone has blended into the crowd and started fighting with the imperial guards. They escorted the third prince away." The ominous feeling in Emperor Jiawen's heart intensified. This is the imperial capital. Who would help him like this? They seem to be the Northwest Army. Bang. Emperor Jiawen kicked Eunuch Min's heart. Trash. Eunuch Min fell to the ground with a dull pain in his chest. He spat out a mouthful of blood. However, Emperor Jiawen had already strode outside. Send more men immediately. Seal the city gates. Not only Rongjio, but we can't let anyone related to this incident go. Eunuch Min endured the pain and hurriedly followed. Emperor Jiawen's face darkened. As expected, Rongjio had already secretly contacted the Northwest Army. He had even made such preparations. He planned to escape from the execution ground. Previously, there were even people who wanted to make him the crown prince. What a joke! Rongjio was very ambitious. How could he be willing to be a prince with no real power? Once he became the crown prince, he might not be able to sit on the throne. Emperor Jiawen was walking forward when someone hurriedly rushed over and directly knelt in front of him. Your Majesty! Upon seeing this person, Emperor Jiawen's expression changed. If it weren't for something major, this person definitely wouldn't have appeared here. As expected, that person's next sentence made him feel like he was struck by lightning. Wei Lin led the Northwest Army soldiers here, and they're already 20 miles away from the imperial capital's gate. They said that the third prince had contributed greatly to the country of Yao Chen and had always been loyal to you. Now, you're listening to the slanderous words of a villain and want to execute him. This really hurt the hearts of countless soldiers guarding the borders. So, they're here to ask you to clear the third prince's name. Emperor Jiawen's figure swayed. Northwest Army's Wei Lin, aren't they Rongjio's men? How is this clearing Rongjio's name? They're clearly rebelling. This place is thousands of miles away from the borders, and it takes at least 3 to 4 days for a message to travel back and forth. However, the imperial edict to kill Rongjio was only issued yesterday. These people came so quickly, which means that they arrived long ago. Now they actually have the cheek to accuse me? Eunuch Min hurriedly went forward to support Emperor Jiawen, but Emperor Jiawen flung him away. The next moment, Emperor Jiawen harshly slapped the person kneeling in front of him. That man's face was instantly slapped to the side. His cheeks rapidly swelled up. However, he immediately bowed and kowtowed. Your Majesty, please calm down. It's all my fault. You actually only discovered such an important matter now? What use do I have for you? Emperor Jiawen's hand was completely numb from the slap, but his chest was still filled with anger, and his face was green. Your Majesty, those people seem to have come in batches. They only gathered again after all of them arrived. That's why I didn't discover them in time. What kind of place is the imperial capital? We're in charge of guarding the city gates, so how dare we slack off? However, those people from the Northwest Army are too sneaky. We didn't even realize it previously. When we realized that something was amiss, it was already too late. How many people did they send? Asked Emperor Jiawen as he took a deep breath. Around 5,000. Emperor Jiawen panted. 5,000 imperial guards are nothing to worry about. Where's Chuning? Get him to bring people over immediately. Your Majesty, did you forget that you just sent Lord Chuning out of the city yesterday? Reminded Eunuch Min carefully. Emperor Jiawen was dazed. He then remembered that he seemed to have found some news related to the bronze vat outside the imperial capital, so he had already sent Chuning to investigate. They weren't even in the imperial capital now. Let Zhao Ming take over, and you immediately gather the imperial guards. You must stop them outside the imperial capital's gates. There are more than 10,000 imperial guards, so it shouldn't be a problem to deal with 5,000 people. The man kneeling on the floor seemed to have seen through Emperor Jiawen's thoughts as he braced himself. Your Majesty, the imperial guards are scattered all over the imperial capital. It's already difficult to gather them immediately. The most important thing is that the people who came seem to be the Northwest Army's elites. It's not that I'm afraid, but I know too well how troublesome this situation is. How could a person who could survive on the battlefield be compared to these pampered imperial guards in the imperial capital? If there's no other way, the city gates will fall in no time. Digression, the plot is stuck, and it's very difficult to write. I'll go back and sort out the plot. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from IUN. Chapter 441. It was early winter in the imperial city, and the wind was biting cold. Outside the city gates, the soldiers from both sides were in a standoff. Time passed bit by bit, and the afterglow shone down. Outside the city gates, 5,000 elites stood in formation, filled with a strong murderous aura. After looking at them for a long time, one could almost smell the sand and blood mixed in the air. The imperial guards on the city walls were fully armed. A tall man dressed in black armor stood in the middle of the group. This person was the deputy commander of the imperial guards, Zhao Ming. Chu Ning was not around, so he took on the task at the last moment and became the commander of the imperial guards. His eyes were fixed on the front as he shouted in a deep voice. "Where is the Northwest Army's deputy general, Wei Lin?" His low and powerful voice instantly spread far and wide. A man in red armor took a step forward. "I'm here." It was an extremely muscular man who looked no more than 30 years old. He had a beard on his face and looked very fierce. Zhao Ming took a deep breath. Wei Lin was very famous in the Northwest Army. He was violent and strong. Moreover, he was a stage 5 warrior who fought his way out on the battlefield. Just by himself, he could take on 100 people by himself. Not to mention the thousands of soldiers behind him, who were obviously not easy to deal with. Rongjio was fully prepared this time. According to Yao Chen's laws, the deputy general can't leave the army without His Majesty's orders. He can't bring soldiers into the imperial city. "Wei Lin, are you rebelling?" Wei Lin laughed. "Zhao Ming, it's fine if you're not strong enough, but it turns out that your brain is useless too. I've already said that this is not a rebellion. It's just that His Majesty's actions toward the third prince are unreasonable. He even hurt the hearts of the Northwest Army soldiers. We're only here to help His Highness the third prince and to seek justice for ourselves." Zhao Ming was about to retort when he suddenly saw a commotion in the crowd opposite him. Then, it suddenly split in the middle. A man walked out from the middle. He was wearing armor, and his face was solemn and majestic. It was Rongjio. Zhao Ming's heart sank. Rongjio indeed successfully escaped. After the riot at the execution ground, the imperial guards were collectively mobilized to search for Rongjio's whereabouts in the entire imperial city. However, they did not find anything until he arrived. It turned out that Rongjio had already left the imperial city during the chaos. At this time, the prison clothes and shackles on his body were long gone. He was dressed in martial attire and looked bloody and fierce. "Greetings, Your Highness." Wei Lin cupped his fists and bowed. The soldiers behind him immediately shouted in unison, "Welcome back, Your Highness." Their shouts shook the heavens. Rongjio raised his palm and immediately suppressed the voice. When Zhao Ming and the other imperial guards saw this scene, they were all shocked. The fact that Rongjio could do this was enough to show his prestige in the military. No wonder he dared to do this. Rongjio looked at Zhao Ming expressionlessly. "Zhao Ming, I don't want to hurt the innocent, so I'll give you a chance. Open the city gate. Otherwise, don't blame I for being merciless." How could Zhao Ming do it? "Your Highness." Doing such a rebellious thing, in the end, he would be spurned by the world. "I advise you to repent and be saved. Return with me now and apologize to His Majesty." Rongjio sneered. "I have already been labeled as a rebellious person. Since that's the case, I might as well fulfill this label." A trace of uneasiness surged in Zhao Ming's heart. "I joined the army when I was 14 years old and fought on the battlefield for many years, killing countless enemies. There are a total of 23 scars on my body, and every one of them is fatal. I have made great contributions to country Yaochen, but in the end, all I received was a prison uniform and countless crimes. If he admitted it, how could he be reconciled? Apologize? The person sitting on the dragon throne now did not have the qualifications to order him around from a high position. Zhao Ming said in a deep voice, "Your Highness." Before he could finish speaking, he saw Rong Jiao raise his hand high. Then it fell harshly. The first person to break the city gate today will be promoted by 3 levels. 1,000 taels of gold. A low and powerful voice instantly sounded. The countless Northwest Army soldiers behind him instantly became excited. They raised their arms and shouted in unison, "Kill, kill, kill." Wei Lin looked up and laughed. "Haha, brats, didn't you hear what His Highness said? This time I won't go easy on you. This city gate. Let me take it." Then, Wei Lin's figure instantly rushed out. When one person moved, 1,000 people followed. Seeing Wei Lin go straight to the city gate, the people behind him followed one after another. Rong Jiao suddenly pulled out the padao that he always carried with him. The sound of the padao rang out. The wind howled. The next moment, he tipped his toes and personally attacked. Today, he would return all the humiliation and torture that he had suffered in the imperial city. Zhao Ming immediately said, "Release the arrows." The imperial guards hidden behind the battlements of the city wall drew their bows in unison. Countless black iron arrows pierced through the air. The two sides were completely engaged in a battle. When the city gate was in a tense situation, the imperial city was also in chaos. Even though a portion of the imperial guards were responsible for guarding, the people's hearts were in chaos. The streets and alleys were in a mess, and almost no one appeared. Everyone was hiding in their own homes. After Rong Jin was removed from his position, everyone thought that Rong Jiao would naturally be made the new crown prince. Who knew that not only did he not become the crown prince, but he even directly started a rebellion. However, anyone with a discerning eye could tell that Rong Jiao had long made preparations. If not, he wouldn't be able to gather the Northwest Army in such a short period of time. For a moment, the crowd couldn't tell if Emperor Jiawen let Rong Jiao down first or if Rong Jiao started the rebellion first. However, Chu Lue didn't have time to care about all this at this point. This was because Mu Qinghe personally came to her residence. In the room, Chu Lue slightly widened her eyes. "What? Leave now?" Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 442. Is there a problem? Asked Mu Qinghe coldly as she knitted her brows. The other side kept urging him to go back, and he couldn't delay any longer. Besides, the injuries he suffered in the Imperial Mausoleum had mostly healed over the past 2 days. Now was the best time to go back. That's not it. Chu Lue thought for a moment. It's just that the Imperial City situation is a little special. Won't it seem strange if we leave now? The Northwest Army led by Rong Jiao has already started fighting with the Imperial Guards. It doesn't make sense for us to leave at this time. Besides, I already know that all of this is Rong Xiu's plan. How can I leave without seeing the results? Mu Qinghe lightly asked in return. Even if they start fighting, what does it have to do with us leaving? It's just a small fight. This small country Yaochen isn't even as big as a state under me. Chu Lue instantly had the urge to facepalm. A small fight? The deaths of thousands of people and a country's political power were just a small fight in Mu Qinghe's eyes. However, with his status, there doesn't seem to be anything wrong with saying this. The battles that Mu Qinghe had experienced were indeed much more dangerous and scary than this. No, Vice Admiral Mu. I think you've misunderstood me. Chu Lue deliberated before speaking. I'm Prince Li's fiancé, so I'm considered part of the royal family. Now that something like this has happened, how can I just leave? At the very least, I have to wait until everything is settled. Mu Qinghe's expression turned even colder. Time is limited. Leave or stay. Choose one. Chu Lue was in a dilemma. I must go to the Tianling dynasty. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. If I follow Mu Qinghe back, not only will I be able to do it openly, but I can also hide my identity better. Moreover, it was very likely that they would directly come into contact with Jiang Yuqing and the others. Without this layer of relationship, even if she broke through to the 7th stage, entered the Heaven's Canopy, and returned to the Tianling dynasty, the situation might not be better than now. But if he left now, what would happen to Rong Xiu? What about father? She wasn't worried that they wouldn't be able to protect her, but she hadn't explained anything yet. If she left with Mu Qinghe now, it would definitely cause a lot of trouble. Who knew when he would be able to come back after this trip? Or would he never come back? Chu Liwei pursed his lips tightly and didn't say anything for a while. Mu Qinghe, it's been so many years. Why don't you have any tender feelings for the fairer sex? A mocking and casual voice was heard. Chu Liwei looked up and saw Jian Fengqi. As he walked over, he smiled and said, Prince Li and Miss Chu just got engaged. They haven't even held their wedding ceremony yet. If you ask her to go back with you now, wouldn't you be breaking up the couple? It's so far away. It'll be difficult for the couple to see each other in the future. Mu Qinghe turned his face and looked at him expressionlessly. Jian Fengqi shrugged his shoulders. Not only did he not stop, but he even walked to Mu Qinghe's side and placed his arm on the latter's shoulder as he smiled charmingly. Anyway, the deadline has passed. The others who should go back have already gone back. It's too late for you to set off now. Why are you nervous for a day or two? In my opinion, why don't you do me a favor? Hey, just talk. Why do you have to hit me? Jian Fengqi quickly broke free from Mu Qinghe's grip. He rubbed his wrist that was almost hit and took a few steps back. Fine. Anyway, it's your business. No one else can do anything about it, right? It'll be fine if I don't say anything? Chu Liwei was speechless. Jian Fengqi was a head taller than Mu Qinghe. He also looked tall and strong. Why was he so scared? Looking at this scene from the side, it was really strange. However, she quickly focused on some words in Jian Fengqi's sentence. Deadline? Could it be that there was a time limit for Mu Qinghe's trip this time? And why were there other people? It sounded like many people were going out at the same time to complete a mission. Could it be that they were going to find a cultivator with a Daijing Yuan meridian? Chu Liwei vaguely felt that something was not right. But looking at Mu Qinghe, it was obvious that he would not reveal anything. Mu Qinghe's expression was cold. I have to go back today. Jian Fengqi's expression changed slightly. Because his back was facing Chu Liwei did not see the change in his expression. But soon, Jian Fengqi's eyes regained their calmness. He crossed his arms, rubbed his chin, and asked tentatively, Why don't you go back first? Why don't you go back first? Once this matter is settled, this young master will personally escort her back. As soon as he finished speaking, Mu Qinghe immediately said, No. Why not? Isn't this a very good suggestion? Jian Fengqi paused and looked meaningfully at Mu Qinghe. You're busy. You're just wasting time here. Since I'm free, why don't I look after her for a few days? With me around, do you think I'll let her be late? Chu Liu's heart skipped a beat. Late? Was Mu Qinghe looking for her because he was in a hurry to go back? Miss Chu doesn't want to go back now. Isn't it too heartless of you to take her away by force? Jian Fengqi returned to his usual playful tone. But it was clear that he was serious about this proposal. Mu Qinghe's eyes flashed with a hint of contemplation. After a moment, he finally said, 3 days at most. No problem. Jian Fengqi immediately agreed. Then, he suddenly thought of something and turned to look at Chu Liwei. 3 days should be enough, right? Chu Liwei gently nodded. Thank you, Vice Admiral Mu, young Master Jian. She had a premonition that this battle would come to a conclusion in 3 days. What she needed to do was to make use of these 3 days to arrange everything properly. Mu Qinghe glanced at Chu Liwei. With a wave of his wrist, something flew out from his sleeve. Chu Liwei immediately caught it and looked down. This is my token. Take this and someone will bring you to me when the time comes. Then he didn't say anything else. With a thought, A long sword flew out and floated in front of him. With a leap, Mu Qinghe turned around and left on his sword. He was very fast, and he disappeared from Chu Liyue's sight in the blink of an eye. Chu Liyue knitted his brows. Young Master Jian, did Vice Admiral Mu go back? Jian Fengqi retracted his gaze, and the emotions in his eyes quickly disappeared. He then changed into his usual carefree smile. He has things to do, so you don't have to worry about him. You, on the other hand, just let me know when you're ready. Chu Liyue's lips curved up. Thank you, young Master Jian. Jian Fengqi's smile deepened. Oh right, I heard that Emperor Jiawen seems to be looking for a bronze cauldron these few days. Is that true? Chapter 443. Chu Liyue's eyebrows twitched. It seemed that Jian Fengqi hadn't been idle during his stay in the capital. He even knew about this. However, his strength was tyrannical. If he really wanted to investigate something, it was likely that not many people could stop him. Thus, Chu Liyue quickly weighed the pros and cons in his heart and nodded honestly. Young Master Jian is well informed. Jian Fengqi raised his eyebrows and smiled ambiguously. It's a coincidence. I only found out about this by accident. It was on the day that the item was taken away. Chu Liyue's expression instantly froze. Young Master Jian knows who stole the bronze cauldron? Jian Fengqi's icy eyes flashed with a ripple of light. I said it earlier. I just happened to see it. Of course, that person's face was covered, so I didn't see it clearly. That meant that he really saw it. And it was actually a person. To be able to kill all the guards inside and outside Heptagon Alley in a very short period of time without even giving them the chance to ask for help, it was enough to show that the person must be a top expert. One must know that there were many rank 4 warriors among them. An ordinary rank 5 warrior would never be able to do this. Chu Liyue looked around vigilantly and lowered his voice. I wonder if young Master Jian can tell me in detail what that person looked like? I can only confirm that it was a man and a rank 6 warrior. As for the rest, I'm not sure. Then did you see where that person went with the bronze cauldron? This, Jian Fengqi paused for a moment and shrugged. I was just surprised that there was another rank 6 warrior here, so I took a second look. Who would care about that bronze cauldron? At that time, he didn't know that it was so important. By the time he saw some clues, the other party had already disappeared. Chu Liyue could see that he was telling the truth and could only sigh helplessly. Anyway, thank you. Speaking of which, this matter had nothing to do with Jian Fengqi, so it was normal that he didn't care. However, if you really want to find that person, it's not like I can't help you. Chu Liyue was taken aback. Didn't you say that you didn't see clearly before? Jian Fengqi smiled wickedly. It seems that young Miss Chu doesn't remember what I do? Celestial physician, celestial physician. You left something on that person? Jian Fengqi knocked her head with his finger. Smart. Chu Liyue. If it was in the past, he wouldn't have dared to be so impudent in front of her. But now, it wasn't the time. Why, do you want me to help you? In any case, you still have 3 days. You have nothing to do anyway. Seeing Jian Fengqi's expression, Chu Liyue squinted her eyes. This person was still the same as before, eager to see the world in chaos. How was this helping her? He clearly wanted to join in the fun and watch her make a fool of herself. Chu Liyue's lips slowly curved into an extremely sincere smile. Of course. I'll have to trouble you with this matter, young Master Jian. When this matter is over, Lu Yu will definitely reward you handsomely. Jian Fengqi inexplicably shuddered. Chu Liyue, when she smiled, it was exactly the same as that person's. Every time he saw her smile like that, he felt that disaster was about to befall him. He didn't expect that even though that person was already dead, he still subconsciously felt awe when he saw that similar expression. This psychological trauma was really too great. Fine. I'll help you. Jian Fengqi hurriedly looked away and took 2 steps back, sizing up Chu Liyue. In fact, overall, whether it was their facial features or body shape, they didn't look very similar. However, he didn't know why, but when he looked at Chu Luiyue, he would think of that person from time to time. He didn't believe that Mu Qinghe didn't have such misconceptions. If you really go there... Jian Fengqi suddenly thought of something and muttered in a low voice. Chu Luiyue didn't seem to understand his expression and asked gently, "Where are we going?" Jian Fengqi pointed in the direction Mu Qinghe left. "Do you still remember this young master saying that you somewhat resemble an old friend?" Chu Luiyue nodded. "If they see you, they will definitely be very surprised." Jian Fengqi smiled brightly. He wasn't the only one who had such a psychological trauma. There was nothing to be ashamed of. But Jiang Yuqing and those people, he really didn't know how they would react when they saw Chu Luiyue. It would definitely be very exciting. Thinking of that scene, Jian Fengqi felt that his entire body was healed. "Forget it. Let's not talk about this anymore. Since you're in such a hurry, I'll help you find him now." Then he took out a small bell. That bell was only the size of a thumb, and it was carved out of blue-green peacock stone. Through the hollow gap, one could see that there seemed to be something gently knocking against the bell, which made a crisp sound. Jian Fengqi focused on listening for a while, and a surprised expression appeared on his face as he looked at Chu Luiyue. That person is still in the imperial city. The atmosphere in the palace was even more tense than outside. In a dark dungeon somewhere, Situ Xingshan was locked up again. Blessing Palace had already been burned down, and she was locked up somewhere else this time. However, Emperor Jiawen specially ordered for more manpower. For 24 hours a day, there were always people guarding within 10 steps of Situ Xingshan, and they guarded her closely. One of Situ Xingshan's arms and legs were crippled, so she could only lie on the floor pathetically. She fainted and woke up a few times. Every time, she hoped that she would be in a different place when she opened her eyes. But no. Her heart was filled with despair. "Even Elder Zong Yi couldn't save me, let alone the others. I don't know what's going on with father, but there's still no news. I really didn't expect the third prince to really start a rebellion. I wonder if he'll fight his way to the palace." A worried voice could be heard. Situ Xingshan paused and realized that the few people in charge of guarding at the side were softly discussing something. Yeah. No wonder His Majesty was so wary of him previously and even sentenced him to death. It turns out that he already expected this day to come. So what? Didn't he still escape from the execution ground? I heard that there's already a fight outside the city gates. The Northwest Army's people don't care about their lives. They came prepared. From what I see, they have a high chance of winning. That might not be the case. Other than the Imperial Guards in the Imperial City, there are also the elites from the various aristocratic families. How can it be broken so easily? It's a pity that we have to continue guarding here. If not, we can also find a chance to win. Before that person could finish his sentence, he suddenly let out a short scream. The remaining people did not even have time to react before their lives were harvested. Situ Xingshan immediately looked up. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 444. A man in a long black robe appeared in front of her. The other party was wearing a black and red ghost mask, which almost covered his entire face. She could only see a pair of cold and indifferent brown eyes. He stood there, and his entire body was enveloped in an extremely strong suppression. The few people who were still talking previously were all on the floor, motionless, and completely dead. The thick smell of blood filled the air. Situ Xingshan held her breath, and her hair stood on end. This man is very dangerous. Who are you? She instinctively touched her wrist, but she felt nothing. She then remembered that the bracelet had already been destroyed by Yi Zhiding. Now, she had nothing on her that could be used to attack or defend. That man suddenly laughed, and his voice was hoarse. "You don't need to know who I am. You just need to know that I'm here to help you." "Help me?" Situ Xingshan knitted her brows. "Who exactly are you? Why are you helping me?" She was originally very suspicious, and her experiences over the past few days had almost tortured her to insanity. Hence, when she heard this, she was not happy at all. Instead, she felt even more uneasy. That man did not say anything as he waved his sleeves, and a green glow flashed across. A bronze cauldron appeared in front of Situ Xingqian. At the edge, there were still bloodstains that had long since dried up. Situ Xingqian took a closer look, and her eyes shrunk. This is clearly the bronze cauldron in Heptagon Alley. But didn't I lose this thing previously? Why is it in this unfamiliar man's hands? Besides, he actually brought it over. What exactly do you want to do? It took Situ Xingqian a long time to find her voice. After a short silence, that man finally spoke. Don't you know very well what you should do? Situ Xingqian clenched her fists in her sleeves tightly. You, don't say that you don't know. I know very well what you want to do. This thing was originally prepared for Rongjin, but it's a pity that that idiot still doesn't know what it is. Hence, this belongs to you now. You really want to give this to me? It seems like you're not very willing. As the man spoke, he was about to move, as if he was planning to retrieve the bronze cauldron. Situ Xingqian immediately shouted. Wait. She endured the pain in her body and limped over. She stared at the bronze vat for a while. What are your conditions? She didn't believe that he would help her for no reason. When the time is right, you will naturally know. The man seemed to be too lazy to pay attention to her and replied impatiently. Situ Xingqian did not dare to ask further as she slowly touched the bronze cauldron. However, just as she was about to touch him, she suddenly stopped and looked at her hand with resentment. It was withered and purplish, looking extremely terrifying. Other external wounds and even internal injuries could be healed in the end. However, the poison that entered the body was not that easy to remove. The more time passed, the more they accumulated. What if she couldn't return to normal after she got out? What should she do? I have a request. Situ Xingqian mustered her courage and asked. My physical body is seriously injured, and I've been poisoned. I wonder if you can help me? The man's gaze landed on her hands. Situ Xingqian looked at him nervously. However, the man's tone was nonchalant. No. Then he turned around and left. Situ Xingqian opened her mouth, but before she could say anything, the man's back view had already disappeared. She gritted her teeth. That person is very strong, and his background is definitely not ordinary. How can he not do anything about the poison in my body? He just doesn't want to help. Situ Xingqian suppressed her resentment and looked at the bronze cauldron again. The surroundings were dark, and the bloodstains at the edges gave off a strange and eerie aura when one looked at them for a long time. Situ Xingqian took a deep breath in and placed her hands on the bronze cauldron. The moment she touched it, the remaining bloodstains on her hands were instantly absorbed by the bronze cauldron. A strange, blood-red glow shot out from within and completely enveloped Situ Xingqian. Chu Luiyue followed Jian Fengqi all the way. When Chu Luiyue realized that Jian Fengqi was also heading toward the palace, she finally knitted her brows and stopped. Jian Fengqi turned around and looked at her in confusion. What's wrong? Chu Luiyue glanced at the bell in his hands. This is Jian Fengqi's treasure, and it almost never makes a mistake. Young Master Jian, that's the palace. Will that person still stay in the palace after stealing that thing? Jian Fengqi squinted his eyes. Do you not believe me? That's not it. Chu Luiyue paused. Just follow me. Don't worry. Since I promised to help you, I'll definitely help you until the end. Upon hearing Jian Fengqi's words, Chu Luiyue felt more at ease and continued to follow him. But when the two of them reached the palace walls and were about to think of a way to enter, Jian Fengqi suddenly raised his brows, placed the bell by his ear, and listened carefully. Immediately, his expression changed. He doesn't seem to be here anymore. What? Chu Luiyue looked around. At this time, no one had passed by this place. Wasn't he here just now? How could he be over there? Jian Fengqi quickly turned around. Chu Luiyue naturally followed without hesitation. But after taking 2 steps, she couldn't help but look back, and her eyes darkened. After Jian Fengqi had walked for some distance, he realized that Chu Luiyue was actually standing there, motionless. Don't you want to track that person down? Jian Fengqi teased. Chu Luiyue shook her head. Then she slowly said, "Why did that person first come to the palace and then leave?" Jian Fengqi paused for a moment, then suddenly understood. "You're saying that he purposely came to the palace?" Chu Luiyue looked up and carefully stared at the tall palace walls as if she wanted to see through the walls and see everything that was happening inside. After a moment, she finally made up her mind. "I want to make a trip to the palace. I have a strong feeling in my heart that that man must have a motive for coming this time." In the palace, the only person closely related to the bronze cauldron is Emperor Juan. Situ Xingqian. But just as Chu Luiyue was about to think of a way to enter, she was pulled back by Jian Fengqi. "You're going in broad daylight?" Chu Luiyue knitted her brows and was about to say something when she suddenly saw a firework appear in the faraway sky. The next moment, it suddenly exploded. Bang! A fluttering military flag suddenly bloomed. Chu Luiyue's heart sank. The city gate has been broken. Digression. Later, there is another update for mobile users. Please browse and read, a better reading experience from the Love Network. Chapter 445. This speed was even faster than Chu Luiyue had expected. "I'm afraid that Rongjiu will rush into the palace with his men in no time." Chu Luiyue's mind raced as she looked at Jian Fengqi and asked, "Where's that person? Where did that person go?" Jian Fengqi pointed in a direction. Suddenly, the bell in his hand let out a crisp sound. Jian Fengqi instinctively threw the bell out. That item quickly broke into many pieces in midair. Then they all fell to the ground. It actually broke on its own. Jian Fengqi's fingers curled up slightly, and he could still feel a slight numbness on his fingertips. However, his mind was blank at this point. This, Chu Luiyue looked at him in understanding. "Young Master Jian, it seems like your tracking skills aren't very good. The other party had clearly discovered me long ago." Jian Fengqi's usual smile had long disappeared, and he looked exceptionally cold and stern. He was clearly traumatized. Chu Luiyue rarely saw Jian Fengqi with such an expression. If she was free, she would definitely be very willing to admire his expression in detail. However, she was not in the mood now. The other party seemed to be targeting Jian Fengqi, but she knew in her heart that the other party's real motive was to lure her here. Every move that he made previously was on purpose. Jian Fengqi harshly closed his eyes. This was a huge humiliation to him. He had never suffered such a loss in all his years of life. "You're really fast. If I find out who that person is, I definitely won't let him off." Chu Luiyue was also very curious about that person's identity, but the other party was one step ahead of her, so there was nothing she could do now. Since the other party spent so much effort to lure her here, wouldn't it be a pity if she didn't go in to take a look? Thinking of this, she turned around and left. Jian Fengqi was shocked. "You're going back now? Didn't you want to go in just now?" Chu Luiyue nodded. "I want to go in." "Then it's easy to get into trouble if we go in now. Let's wait for the right time." After saying that, Chu Luiyue's figure quickly disappeared from sight. Jian Fengqi thought that it made sense. He glanced at the blue bell fragments on the ground with heartache and resentment, then turned around and followed Chu Luiyue. At the same time, everyone in the imperial capital saw the military flag and realized that the city gate had been breached. In the palace, Emperor Juan, a few family heads, and other important people in the imperial court were all gathered at Chengqian Hall. Everyone was originally discussing how to deal with the Northwest Army's attack, but the loud noise from outside finally silenced the noisy Chengqian Hall. Everyone seemed to have sensed something, and their expressions froze on their faces. Sure enough, someone came to report. "Your Majesty! The city gate had been breached. The third prince has already led thousands of rebel soldiers into the imperial capital." The imperial capital was backed by a mountain range, making it easy to defend and difficult to attack. The only way to break through was from the direction of the city gate. But now, Rongjiu actually took such a short time to bring people in. First, they broke through the city gate. Soon, they would break through the palace gate. Everyone in the hall looked at Emperor Zhuan, and the surroundings were silent. Emperor Zhuan was furious. Useless. The number of imperial guards is almost twice that of the rebel soldiers. How did this happen? The person who came to report could only speak with a trembling voice. Your Majesty, they seem to be very familiar with the imperial capital's military arrangements. That's why Officer Zhao Ming and the rest couldn't. The crowd looked at each other. The imperial capital's military arrangements were top secret, and not many people knew about it. How did Rong Jiu get his hands on it? Digression, tomorrow at 6:00 p.m., please browse for a better reading experience from IU. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Immortal Journey YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.